preseason standing desk edition, I guess we got. If you haven't realized, we have 3 people on, especially if you're listening. We have 3 people here. Mike Craven in the studio as we kind of wrap up the magazine with kind of a lot of last-minute checks. Craven comes in to kind of do his last-minute checks as well to make sure that his reputation is not on the line with some of the stuff he puts in the magazine. So yeah, we typically have all hands on deck as we send the press on Friday. But thank you guys for joining us regardless. I'm your host, Ishmael Johnson, alongside Mike Craven, our senior college writer, and our staff writer, Carter Yates. Of course, the reason you can hear us is everyone's favorite Mal pal in the other room, Mallory Hartley. Hi, Mallory.
Hey, y'all. I don't know if you can see me.
Yeah. That's what,
way in the other
if you saw me looking, if you saw me before I introed, I was like go, go, I can't see her over the light. But anyway. All right, guys. We got a pretty fun show, I'd say, planned for today. We have coaching rankings that we each came up with. We're going to kind of debate our criteria, kind of debate, it's a fun-spirited debate. And then we also have a power poll that these two are going to kind of really break down in the latter half. First of all, Mike, how excited are you to almost be done with this?
Pretty excited. Also got a book project going on simultaneously, so it's been a lot. I've written 70,000 words that nobody other than this office has written or read.
Yeah.
So excited for other people to read that. The last week of the magazine is always a little bit of bittersweet. You're proud of what you did, but you're also just ready for it to be done.
Sure, 100%.
So that's where I'm at with it right now.
Carter, you joined last year. You got a little taste of it, but now this is the first time you've been in the office with your own college assignments as well, as far as UTEP and Sam Houston. There's a little teaser right there. What do you think?
Well, you can't tell because we look so calm and collected right now, but there's some fires going on behind the camera that we're just ignoring for a minute to talk about the coaches' debates.
Yeah.
I'm taking a nice little break.
Yeah. All right. So I mentioned that. But first, we do have a little bit of news. It's nothing crazy, but I wanted a little tidbit that I do think is kind of catching on, and Craven kind of mentioned. Maybe we see a little bit more of in the era of NIL. First new order of business was Texas State yesterday. If you're listening on Wednesday, they announced on Tuesday their first stadium naming rights deal. I believe UFCU, United Federal Credit Union, will be taking over the naming rights for Texas State Bobcat Stadium. It becomes the 3rd credit union to have a stadium naming rights deal in Texas. I think that's interesting because I think that's going to be kind of a trend we see because you have, of course, UFCU at Texas State, DATCU, most recently, DATCU Stadium at North Texas, and then TDECU at Houston. That may be something because of the fact that the Boone Pickens of the world, right? Those guys, those figures aren't really, they're not really around anymore, but also the point you brought up, they're going to be kind of needing their money to go elsewhere.
Yeah, if you have a big money donor that could pay to afford a stadium, naming rights, right? You'd rather probably tap that for NIL and weight room and other type of facility upgrades and then try to go outsource a company to do the stadium rights, right? Because I think the number I saw was 22 or 23 million.
23 over 15 years.
Yeah. 23 over 15 years, right? Well, that's 23 million that your boosters now can put towards something else. So if that 23 million is earmarked for the stadium rights, well then where do you get the NIL? Where do you get the weight room? Where do you get the facility upgrades? I think it's a way to take pressure off and to find new revenue streams, not only with NIL, but as we move closer and closer to college athletes being employees.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so again, that was a little bit of news. I had the news drop. Appreciate Chris Coots and all that. They did a great job of keeping us updated. Go look at that story on TexasFootball.com. But let's get to the topic at hand, the debate, the discussion. There's some coaching rankings going on. A bunch of outlets put out their huge 128, 131, whatever it is now, coaching ranking in the offseason. We're not going to go that far because to be honest, we know we'd make some people mad with some of our full 13.
Y'all won't catch me saying who's 10, 11, 12, and 13.
Listen. We'll say it in the office if you want to talk to us, not on a recording machine. But let's
recording machine.
Stop. Don't.
On the old interweb.
Who calls it that?
You know your recorders. Anyway, so we each came up with five.
The top 5.
The top 5, not bottom 5, not a full 13. So how do you want to do this? All right, so we don't know, well, I guess we do know our rankings, but we didn't collaborate as far as we came up with them in a silo. And then we just said, hey, here's my rankings. We didn't we got to make sure these are balanced. These are literally just ours.
Let's start with number 1.
Okay, I think number 1 is the same.
Yeah.
Steve Sarkisian. Number 1 is Steve Sarkisian from the University of Texas. And I think we can talk a little bit about why we kind of all picked them. Do you want to go into criteria as well? Because we each have our own, like, how we rank them more or less. But I think overall...
Let's talk criteria first.
Yeah. I think yours is pretty straightforward, Carter, so you explain yours.
My criteria is who I would hire tomorrow. So I am at X university. These are the 13 college coaches in Texas. I'm going off who I would hire first.
Yeah, I tried to do a little bit more historical as if I was ranking them. You know, like if it was like who are the best head coaches in the state, and some of that has to be resume, not all of it,
sure,
but some of it has to be resume. So I probably lean more on some of the older coaches who have been around and kind of worked their way up.
I went with my fate of the planet scenario.
The most interesting theory.
Well, it's like, it's not long term, it's not tomorrow, it's not like one game, but it's aliens come down. They say, hey, this team needs to be as good as possible this season for one season. Who are you coaching this team with, right? And so we all came up with one, Sark.
Sark's the same for all three of those criteria.
Right, all the same criteria is Sark, which I think is pretty interesting because you look at who you'd hire tomorrow, you'd say Steve Sarkisian. I think we can all admit probably the best offensive mind in the state. Historically, he's on pace right now to be very much in that conversation, pretty much probably first in that conversation, at least again what he set up. And then I'd also be like, yeah, I'd want this guy tomorrow to coach this offense, right?
Yeah, I think in modern college football, you need a talent acquisitioner, somebody who knows how to spot talent, somebody who knows how to find talent, somebody who knows how to keep and develop talent. I think what we've seen with Sark at Texas shows that he can do that.
Yeah.
He can go get the best players in the country. He can sign those players. He can keep those players. He can develop those players. And he can also make Christian Jones into a third-round draft pick, right? Like he's done it with those guys as well. Devondre Sweat was a 3-star who ends up being the Outland Trophy. He's built a culture. He's gone to a college football playoff. You know, the one thing that we didn't know about Sark was could we see the results on the field? He had never won 10 games before. He had never won a conference championship. He does that at a place that hasn't done it since 2009. To me, if we're not separate later, we're going to talk about like G5 versus P5 and how different those jobs can be.
Yes.
I think at the P4 level, if I'm Texas, Alabama, Georgia, one of those programs, and I get any of these 13, I'm going with Sark because of his proof of concept that he's done it at a big school and his ability to acquire talent.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian's an F1 driver, so we're talking about USC, Texas. You might need a truck driver for those group of 5 programs, but I'm also picking Sark because I think it's very easy to discredit. Of course, he made Texas come back with the NIL and the transfer portal, but we talk about that Texas job, it is very difficult. Coaches age like presidents when they're at the Texas job. You look at the before and after of Mac Brown there. So the team he took over in 2021 would lose 30-0 to the team he has now. They couldn't even have a spring game when he first took over. Now they're second favorites in the SEC. I think he's done a tremendous job, like Craven talks about, developing the talent, also the talent acquisition. He's the clear-cut pick for me if I'm starting a program tomorrow.
And I think the thing we don't talk about with Sark enough is the coaching staff he's put around him.
100%.
He is kind of the pseudo-offensive coordinator, but he went and got the best offensive line coach in the country, or at least a top 3 or 4 offensive line coach in the country. Tashard Schwartz at running back has been one of the greatest, assistant coach hires in the state in a while. Wide receiver is the only one that's turning over, right?
Sure.
Outside of wide receiver coach, they had every single defensive staff there for 3 straight years. Bo Davis now at LSU. So he's shown the ability to surround himself with really good coaches, and I think that's a part of coaching, about a part of being a head coach that maybe we don't talk about enough.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and say the rest of my list, and you guys then we can kind of open it up to kind of our larger philosophies about why certain guys are where they are. So for me, my number 1 was Steve Sarkisian, as we said. Number 2, Jeff Traylor. Number 3, Rhett Lashley. Number 4, Willie Fritz. Number 5, it's kind of a combination. It's a tie between Sonny Dykes and Mike Elko right now.
The cop-out.
It is very much the cop-out because I had it literally flipped, and then I was like, actually, I want Sonny Dykes. So anyway, that's my top 5. We'll get into it. Craven, you go next.
Yeah, my top 5. I think we all have the same number 2.
Yeah.
Sark at 1, Jeff Traylor at number 2. I have Sonny Dykes at 3. Played for a national championship. Has won at the G5 level, at the P4 level. I got Willie Fritz at number 4. Just Novocaine, right? Just give him enough time, it's going to work. He's going to win some football games for you. And then I'm a big fan of Mike Elko. I think Mike Elko was a home run hire for A&M. Winning at Duke is not easy, and I respect the way he came up. You know, he was a coach at the Merchant Marines.
Yeah.
You know, he coached for 17 years before he was an assistant at the P4 level. So he just feels like one of those guys that you could put him at a JUCO, an NAIA school, junior high, and he's just going to win football games.
And it's very similar to Willie Fritz, right? Because he comes up through FCS, Central Missouri, and then to Sam Houston, takes him to back-to-back title games.
Yeah.
Next year, who I'm hiring, it's Jeff Traylor, like we talked about, everyone's saying number 2. Number 3, Mike Elko. I agree with Craven. I thought that was a very good hire by Texas A&M. Number 4, I'm going G.J. Kinney.
Okay.
From Texas State. I think he's done a magnificent job, a fast rise through the coaching ranks. I think he is a new era of coach that he's going to have a big impact on the sport for decades to come. And then number 5, I'm going Rhett Lashley. Very similar to G.J. Kinney. I think the same kind of offensive guru guy, young, got some swagger to them. I think those are the guys you need to take you into the next level of college football.
I wonder, okay, so now let's open it up a little bit to like kind of where our philosophies, where we talk about our criteria. But some guys you may find missing. Dave Aranda, right? Joey McGuire. Sonny Dykes wasn't on everybody's list, right? Where do you think the logic between, because again, somebody could just bring up Dave Aranda has a conference title, right? Mm-hmm. Why isn't he there in your mind why wasn't he in the consideration?
Because the 3 other seasons have not been good.
Yeah. I think for me, it's the hiring.
Sure.
Right? Like, I think a big part of being a head coach in college football is getting your hires right and getting your recruiting right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Baylor's done either one of those things, right? I mean, they haven't had a player drafted that was recruited by Aranda.
Right. And
they've gone through 3 different defensive coordinators to the point where he's calling defensive plays again. And they're on their 3rd offensive coordinator now with Jake Spavital. That, to me, is a big part of being in that chair. Mm-hmm. They all know football.
Sure.
You don't become a head coach unless you know football. And there's probably not a better defensive mind in the country than Dave Aranda. But being a head coach is less and less about football these days. It's more roster management. It's more NIL. It's more dealing with your boosters and the season ticket holders. I just don't know if Aranda has shown enough consistency to be up there, even though we all know he knows ball.
Right.
He's not proven to be a good CEO.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I think that's where, to me, that's where I have Sonny Dykes on this list because he made a national championship, made a conference championship as well. But that's where I'm kind of teetering is he's shown to be able to rally a locker room, right, as we saw in the first year. He's shown to be able to take talent that maybe was seen as underutilized and give them a new shine and give them a new ceiling. Where I'm concerned and where maybe Elko was kind of Elko was the first to come to my mind at 5 before I put them both there, is because of the player acquisition part, right? Is because of the hiring part. That's kind of the thing that still remains to be seen for me, to where it would have been a national title head coach or appearing head coach who's, again, the only one of these guys who's won a playoff game, right? Mm-hmm. The only reason he's not nailed on is similar to what Carter said. It's the other years, right? Where it's last year where you look at Josh Hoover and he's like, he's good, but like, is he worth betting the house on, right? Just like they thought Chandler Morris was worth betting the house on.
Twice.
They didn't go, twice. Yeah. And they didn't go, well, at least last year, they didn't go with anybody behind him, right? So it was just Chandler Morris. Joe Gillespie, he was like, that's my guy.
Yeah.
Came back to bite him.
Tony Franklin at Cal.
100%. That is a great point as well. So
the transfers he brought in last year.
Yes, the transfers he brought in last year. JoJo Whirl, a lot of guys like that. Trey Sanders did not pan out. So is his talent acquisition eye as good as what it needs to be? I think, like a Steve Sarkisian,
I think that's what's hard about this, right? Is like college football has changed so much in 4 or 5 years that like what makes you a great college coach now may not be the same as 5 years ago, right? It used to be more caretaker, CEO, vibes check guy, right? And like now with NIL and the transfer portal, like I think that's why you're seeing head coaches become younger and younger and younger. And so if I'm doing the list like Carter, I think I do have G.J. Kinney and Rhett Lashley maybe above Sonny Dykes, just because they've shown the willingness to kind of wheel and deal in the portal a little bit more than maybe TCU has. My argument for Sonny is, you know, he won 10 games at SMU. He was the first one to do that since the 80s.
100%.
He won a conference championship at La Tech. And I guess
We've seen what La Tech has been recently.
And I guess I chalk up the Cal thing to Cal. Like
I think
more so than
I was about to say, I think both parties. That's a rare situation where both parties like figured it wasn't working, and both have kind of gotten.
And Cal's bankrupt,
right?
You know, as a football program, UCLA is going to have to give them $10 million of their Big Ten money to like keep the program going, right?
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know who would have won at Cal. Sonny's won everywhere he's gone, but you know, I think the truth about these lists is we get very beholden of what happened a year before because college football changes so quickly. Yeah. That's all we can go on is the most recent results.
I think where Sonny gets knocked down on my list is in this era of coaching turnover every year. I want to go with a head coach that not only is a good CEO, but can lock down one side of the ball. Like Mike Elko's got the defense figured out. Steve Sarkisian has the offense figured out. Sonny Dykes is dependent on his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And like we saw, Ish, when that happens and it's Joe Gillespie and it doesn't work out, it's not pretty.
Mm-hmm. And I think Craven brought this up when we were talking off air about that was Sonny Dykes at one point, right? Yeah. But I think he realized whether it was the Cal situation, like that's not where he feels the time's moved on.
And that's exactly what he realized.
Right.
He was like, when he was at Cal, he was like, I can't ignore the other side of the ball. Like, I can't just be offensive head coordinator guy and then like you go figure out defense, right? And so I think that was a lesson for him. And when you get the coaching hires right, I think TC or like wherever he's been really good. Mm-hmm. When the coordinators haven't been as great, you know, they've been an average football team. And I don't think that's just a Sonny Dykes thing. I think that is. Like I said earlier, I think that's just one of the bigger parts about being a college coach is who you hire.
Yeah. Two names I want to mention that were not on either of our lists, but maybe fit into Craven's or maybe Carter's. Joey McGuire and Casey Keeler. So Craven, for you, the historical guy, right? There's only one coach here that has a national title.
Yeah.
Right? And he was not on the list. In your opinion, what is keeping Keeler from being? Because again, he may be 6'7", but he's not in the 5 of any of our lists.
If like when we do our G5 list, Casey Keeler's there.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
It's just that I don't know how you go from Delaware to Sam Houston to Alabama. You know, like that just feels like a step up in a way that if I was one of those schools, you know, I think I would go younger.
Sure.
And guys who have done some NIL, that's have done some transfer portal stuff to where at Sam Houston, maybe he's great at that.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Because like he's never been at a place that's asked him to go recruit at that level.
I think it's telling that the guy he took over for, Willie Fritz, is on this list because he left to go do it. Right. He left to kind of go do it at Tulane, Georgia Southern, now Houston. So it's kind of like he's kind of what we hope that that Casey Keeler could be, right? With still some time, but is what we've seen him be able to do.
I've seen Fritz win conference championships at 2 different G5 schools.
Right.
Look, Sam Houston still has a running track around their football field. It's hard for him to focus on NIL right now. He's got a lot of stuff going on.
They are getting rid of that. I've seen the footage of Bowers. They are getting rid of that. Joey McGuire, though. All right, he's kind of the new hotness, right? Recruiting really well, getting Texas Tech to shed a lot of money. And you mentioned it, Craven. Historically, Tech's not a great job, but he's doing probably as good as anyone has done outside of winning, a conference title, which they haven't done since forever.
So the last head coach at Texas Tech to post a winning record in conference play in his first 2 years as a head coach was Steve Sloan in the 70s.
Yeah.
The last head coach to win a conference championship at Texas Tech is also Steve Sloan in 1976.
Yeah.
And I can tell you how long ago that was by who is defensive coordinator. Bill Parcells.
Oh my God.
Right? Like that's how long it's been since Tech has competed at that level. With Texas gone, with Oklahoma gone, those excuses are gone. They got money, they're spending it on NIL, their roster's really good. They just put a $250 million, improvement on their facilities in the end zone, right? Like he says this in the magazine. That there's no excuses. It is up to him to go win. He's done it so far in a way that's acceptable for Texas Tech. But to get on a list like this, I think you have to exceed expectations. And so far, he just, maybe year 3 is the year that happens.
And you could argue, of course he's having this much success now with all the investment in the program, but who got that investment?
Right.
It was Joey McGuire. He is a bit of a politician, which you kind of need to be in today's game of college football. I think he has the biggest variance on this list. Like we talked off air, he's probably 7 right now. I could see him going top 3 or we're talking about maybe double digits if this year does not go well. Sure. It's a huge year.
Because we have no questions about Joey off the fields,
No.
right? Like they're going to recruit at a high level, they're going to fundraise at a high level, they're going to pack that stadium, they're going to be excited. Like that's the type of coach you want as a head coach. Now it just needs to like change from 7-8 wins to 9-10 conference contention.
I was going to say, we know about him off the field because if there was a criteria of neither of these guys can be a head coach again, but who gets hired, he's top 3.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like he's top 3 and like you want him on your staff. So yeah, I agree with that point overall. You wanted to kind of throw a wrench in the exercise.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I think that these things should almost be separated in 2 different categories. And I'm going to catch heat because I'm the guy that tried to separate the P4 and the G5 in the playoffs or whatever. And
you manipulated head coaches into saying.
Right. I feel like I'm the one that's like drawing this line in the sand or whatever. But I do think the jobs are completely different. Like, like Carter mentioned, Sark with a bunch of Ferraris, trust him, right? If he has to go like build a program from scratch like Tulane, like Willie Fritz, I'd rather have Fritz, right? And so if we're doing G5, I think my list becomes Jeff Traylor, Rhett Lashley, Willie Fritz, Joey McGuire, and then probably Casey Keeler, right? And like those are the guys I want to kind of build it from the ground up when you don't have $1 million to go get players with.
Yeah, I would probably go Jeff Traylor 1. Oh man, Joey McGuire, GJ Kinney, Rhett Lashley, and then I don't know who sorry. Willie Fritz is in there. Willie Fritz is 2 for me. Traylor, Fritz, McGuire, Kinney, and then Rhett Lashley for me. Because I think with Kinney, UIW, not the easiest job, but he's showing how they should have had higher standards probably before him. And everybody else speaks for themselves. Either they've done it before, like a Traylor or a Fritz, or they're just like built that way, like a McGuire.
And my tiebreaker for Kinney over Lashley was the UIW coaching experience, because I think it is very valuable if you are at an FCS program and then go up to a G5 program. And now Lashley was at UConn, so like you make an argument there, but like they've gotten experience at a school with not so many resources, so when they get to a school with a bunch of resources, it takes off.
And I think that's what is fun about these lists, and also is hard, is like how do you have Casey Keeler and GJ Kinney on the same list?
Right.
Well, they're super not fair. These lists are not fair.
Because like one's been doing it for 20, 30 years, right? It has the resume and national championships, and we think GJ Kinney is going to be a superstar, but like, it's been 1 year at the FBS.
We're banking a lot on next year.
The same with Rhett Lashley, right? Like I think Rhett Lashley is one of the top 5 coaches in the state.
Sure.
I have a hard time putting him in the top 5 because of the one championship he's won. He did it with a team that was so much more talented than everybody else in the conference. He hasn't had to go like win a game he shouldn't yet.
Right.
And he hasn't done that consistently. I can look at I saw Sonny Dykes do it at the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
Like
I was about
18
to say.
months ago.
Yeah.
Against a team that was stealing signs.
Yeah.
Right. And so
people don't talk enough about that.
And so I just that's my favorite part about this stuff, but also the hard thing is like we're putting Rhett Lashley and Jeff Traylor on the same list, and they're just in so different times of their career.
Right.
It's hard to judge it. In 10 years, I think GJ Kinney's in my top 3.
Right.
I think Rhett Lashley may be in my top 4.
Right.
As of right now, it's just hard for me to jump guys that have played for national championships or done it a little bit longer.
Yeah. No, 100%. I'd say that. And with the portal and with how they navigate this next era, which is theoretically collective bargaining and like contracts, and it's like that's another hurdle in addition to NIL, in addition to like it just adds to another criteria to like, can you handle this correctly?
And if we were doing that list, I would bump all the young guys up and take all the old guys down.
100%.
Which is kind of why my list is so young centric, because I'm hiring tomorrow.
And it's because you're very young.
Well, it's like we just saw Nick Saban say like, that's not for me.
Right.
It's like cool. This era is not.
Look
cool.
at the hires that have happened in the last 2 cycles.
Yep.
Take away Willie Fritz, and the average age is like 30.
Yeah.
It's not. Kenny's young.
Yeah.
Morris is young. Scotty Walden's like, I don't even know if he
graduated last year. Yeah.
And so I think one of the reasons that's happening is because this is a young man's game now because of the roster stuff and not being set in your ways.
Yep. 100%. Alrighty. So, any last thoughts on that? Any last words before we kind of shift? We'll take a break and then we'll shift to our next segment. But
no. What does Jeff Traylor have to do to be the number 1 coach next year?
I think here's the thing. Well, one, it'd be hard to. Sark would have to disappoint.
Okay.
Because I think there's one thing about doing it at the highest level.
Because you could argue right now Jeff Traylor's won.
You could argue.
I would have made that argument. I just think everybody would have laughed at me. I'm not the one to make that argument, but I could make that argument.
We could absolutely make that argument. I would say that if
all Jeff Traylor does is win football games.
Yeah, with
every
whoever. We're about to see it. I'm telling y'all, again, I'm not going to hear bank on conference championship, but they're going to be in contention with a team without a player that everybody said he could not win without this year. So, again, we'll see.
You win, you can win.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so before we get to our next segment where we discuss the power poll, we're going to let these guys go set up for a bit. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
I feel like bustin' loose, come on. Get on up. Oh yeah, get on up. Bustin' loose when you wanna sing. Bustin' loose, baby, do your thing. Talking about bustin' loose, yeah.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, even at home. We provide compassionate, caring support virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here.
Wing is the largest residential drone delivery provider in the world, delivering to your home in less than 30 minutes. Order using an app just like other popular delivery services, and Wing's automated drone takes care of the rest. It's fast, safe, and sustainable, and it's now delivering to parts of Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. You can learn more at wing.com/TexasFootball. Again, that's wing.com/TexasFootball.
All right, so if you are watching us, you see a little promo code right above me. I don't have a programming screen on me right now. It's for Home Field Apparel. If you've been listening to us for a while, you know about it. If you're watching, you have no excuse to not know what that promo code is for 15% off your first time purchase at Home Field Apparel. What I'm here to kind of
I was trying to get you to
advertise-
stand up because you looked hunched down.
Listen, it's weird standing up, Mallory, okay? Anyway.
You were like this. You can't see me, but you
I tried to
like
grab a
that.
chair. I tried to grab a chair, and then Mallory yelled at me because I was like, "You're not supposed to sit down." Anyway, whatever.
Because I have the...
She has the camera squared up for those listening on the podcast. Anyway, let me get back to Home Field Apparel, who just dropped their baseball and softball pullovers, which look incredible in time for the College World Series, which is going on right now in softball. Right now, at least the regional tournaments are. Baseball is kind of winding down, so they have a ton of stuff. If you are a supporter of a Texas program, you're going to find something on Home Field Apparel that you like, whether it's a pullover, whether it's a snapback, whether it's joggers, whatever you need. They got you 15% off your first time purchase at Home Field Apparel, DCTF. Promo code, again, DCTF. If you don't want to support us, support any of the other shows on the ROF network. They have their own promo code that gets you the same deal. 15% off your first time purchase, promo code DCTF. All right, let's go over to the side desk. We got Carter Yates and Mike Craven. Carter's about to grill Craven over his power poll list that Craven put together.
Yeah, welcome into our fireside chat, here to discuss Mike Craven's power poll. Mike, I know these are difficult to put together. I saw Mallory put hers together for WTF, and she was agonizing over her picks.
It was tough.
Can we get the power poll up here by any chance?
No.
There we go. Okay, Mike, can you first explain to me what the criteria is for a power poll? Are you doing this based off of who wins on a neutral field, based on relative to conference? How does it go?
Yeah, I look at it as a pound for pound list. You know, I'm a boxing fan. I love MMA, and you're trying to get a lightweight on the same list as a heavyweight, knowing that if they got into a ring together, the heavyweight would win, right? There's weight classes for a reason. We're trying to be the place that talks about Sam Houston and UTEP in the same breath we're talking about A&M and Texas. I believe the only way to make that list interesting is to make it a pound for pound and to make it comparable to who you'll face in your weight class, i.e. your conference. And so I try to weigh it. For this one, right, it's like, who do I think has the most likely chance to do well in their conference? And then I rate them higher for that reason.
Now let's just read it out for those listening. We got number 1, the Texas Longhorns. Number 2, Texas A&M. 3, Texas State. 4, UTSA. 5, Texas Tech. 6, TCU. 7, SMU. 8, Baylor. 9, North Texas. 10, Rice. 11, Sam Houston. 12, Houston. I'm going to ask you about that one, so get an answer ready for me. 13, UTEP. Mike, what was the hardest team to place on this list?
Houston.
Yeah, there we go.
We can get
let's,
that conversation
let's discuss
done.
it.
We can get that conversation done right away. Like, I think Houston is better than a couple of those teams, right? Like, if they play North Texas, I'm taking Houston. If they play Rice, which they do in week 3, I'm going to pick Houston, even though Rice won last year. But I think Rice has a better chance of being bowl eligible and winning 4 or 5 conference games than Houston does. The Big 12, not as top heavy as it used to be, but it's going to be one of those like you can lose every single game type conferences. And I just don't think Houston is going to be a team that can compete with their schedule this year in the Big 12. It's going to take them a couple of years, and that some of that is just based on the history of Willie Fritz.
Yes, you look back at Willie Fritz's time at Tulane, at Sam Houston. Maybe not Sam Houston, but Central Missouri. It takes a little bit for them to get going. He's a full tear it down before he builds it back up guy. Yeah. Which team on this list? We did an episode last week, I believe, on biggest variances of teams that you could see going 3-9 or 9-3. Is there someone on this list you see have a big variance?
Yeah, SMU.
Yes.
SMU going from G5 to P4 is an interesting one because I think there's a scenario where SMU is a better football team that would beat last year's football team by 7 to 10 points and it also be a disappointing 2024, right? Because they're a team that was 11-0 against the G5 last year. And Lashley said this, and it's going to be in the magazine. You know, they could play an average game, and they're up 24-10 at halftime, right? They play an average game next year, and they're probably down 17-10 at halftime, right? They play a really good game, and it's 41-10. They play a really good game next year, and it's going to be 24-17 at halftime. And so the margins are going to be smaller. I don't think that they go 11-3 again. I don't think they win a conference championship with Florida State, Louisville, Clemson in there. So I just think it's hard because I don't think they're a worse team. I think roster-wise they're a better football team, but their competition is going to be better to where I could see them being 4-8. But I could also see them being 8-4, 9-3 if Preston Stone stays healthy and everything hits on the transfer portal and the lines of scrimmage.
This year is going to say a lot about the American Athletic Conference. And I know we've got some American Athletic Conference truthers around here. How difficult was 3-4, Texas State, UTSA? I know we are all stoked for week 2 of that matchup, but did you struggle at all on who to put first?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because, like, if this game's happening tomorrow, I'm picking UTSA to win, right? But I think Memphis is a clearer favorite in the American than there is in the Sun Belt above Texas State. And so with that coin flip, I'm going to lean towards Texas State to win their conference a little bit more than UTSA because of the competition level of the American versus the Sun Belt at the top. I think the Sun Belt's a better overall conference than the American, but I do think Memphis is the favorite and the clear favorite enough in the American to where UTSA is not the betting favorite. I think Texas State's right there to be the betting favorite in the Sun Belt.
This is not really a power poll question, but a personal interesting question for me is like, with the college football playoff, one G5 team is going to get in out of the 12-team playoff. Is it just automatically going to be the American Athletic Conference, or do you think a Sun Belt team, if they're the best team, they're getting in?
Honestly, I think Liberty's got the easiest route from Conference USA. Just like we saw last year. And it has nothing to do with their talent. I think Memphis would kill. I think SMU last year would have beat the crap out of Liberty, for example, right? But they don't play anybody in non-conference. And the Conference USA is so bad, and they have there's such a gap between Liberty and everybody else in Conference USA that they should always be 11-1, 12-0. And I think that's going to give them an advantage because we're still in this state of voting where we take